Okay, so I thought it would be a good opportunity now to talk a little bit about why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. So, first of all, I did not expect to ever be enjoying social media so much, but it's proven to be a wonderful tool to really get information out there that isn't showing up in other places for so many different reasons. But yeah, I wanted to share a little bit about my own personal health journey and how it's fueled and created my path right now. So, I am like a lot of people in that most of the time I took things for granted. I took my health for granted and just assumed that whatever my doctor told me was what I should follow. But as a young kid, I never felt very good. I remember as early as second grade, I just felt off. I felt tired. I felt just really sad, really anxious. But I just thought that was a normal part of the human condition. And as things progressed, the older I got, the worse I felt. By middle school, I was so fatigued. I got on birth control. Then later in high school, my doctors put me on Prozac, which is an SSRI and increases serotonin levels. And I just thought that's how things were. I was really anxious and just decided to just keep going, work harder, ignore my gut issues, and carry on like the rest of the people I saw. Then in college, I thought I had figured it out when all of a sudden I was getting positive tests for Lyme's disease and a bunch of co-infections like Babesia, Chlamydia pneumoniae, Bartonella, Mycoplasma. Finally, it felt like I found the answers, and we did more tests and it showed that my thyroid was really compromised. I was showing heavy metals, I was showing the candida overgrowth, mold exposure, all of these sort of interrelated symptoms. And every time I got a positive test back, it was like, aha, we figured it out. And at that point I was taking what felt like a suitcase of supplements. I was on high dose antibiotics for longer than 7 months and ended up dropping out of college for a bit because I was so sick. I was basically bedridden at this time, just taking my antibiotics and hoping for the best. And in the process was following a very restrictive, grain-free, sugar-free, dairy-free, autoimmune-like diet. And this was again after being vegan for several years in my early years of college, and even before that being more of like a eat Pop-Tarts and highly processed foods kind of a person, switching completely over to wanting to feel better but not finding answers, and following these supposedly healthy plant-based diets and feeling terrible. So anyways, finished up the course of antibiotics and stabilized, was able to go back to school, but again, was not feeling good, and continued seeing doctors and functional medicine practitioners and acupuncturists and really trying to figure out what was going on. And the more people I saw, the more confused I got, the more I thought that I needed to really restrict. I tried the GAPS diet, which for the first couple weeks was just bone broth and ghee and egg yolks, and again was feeling so depleted, just had such a lack of energy that I didn't understand how to move forward. And I just kept thinking that that was what my life was going to be. And the more time that passed, the worse I got. I started developing panic attacks. I sort of lost the ability to sleep. I wasn't digesting things at all. I did a bunch of parasite cleanses, hoping that would cure things, and taking all my liver support, and nothing was really moving the needle. And just a few years ago, someone mentioned the Mucusless diet, so I thought, aha, this is my way to healing. And that was basically a raw fruitarian, sometimes juice only diet, and that led me to dropping to about 79 pounds, losing complete function of my gut. I was just in such a depleted state, which is not surprising considering I was surviving off of just fruit and basically zero protein, zero fat. Yes, so that led to a very desperate point where I thought I was going to die and ended up drinking what is called the Elemental formula. It's a liquid lab-made formula for people with severe gut disorders, because again, I was dealing with SIBO, I was dealing with mast cell and histamine activations to basically everything I ate. I would eat, something even as simple as bananas and swell up and get such intense auto intoxication that I was basically just out of commission. And I wasn't working at the time. So I would spend almost the entire day in my bathtub doing 6 or 7 or 8 rounds of enemas just to get the matter out of me because, again, I had lost function of my gut. So things were not looking so hopeful. I ended up doing 2 weeks in the hospital for hyperthermia with high-dose antibiotics to see if that would treat these underlying infections that I thought were causing this gastroparesis or the paralysis of my gut. That didn't help. In fact, that knocked me down even more. It was way too depleting. And, I was losing hope. I wasn't finding answers from my Western docs. I wasn't finding answers from my functional docs. I was getting IV treatments. Just things were not looking good. They were thinking of having to put a port in to feed me through my heart because I was just so depleted and so underweight. And a friend actually mentioned that he had heard about and was finding success himself on the carnivore diet. And, people were starting to talk about it. Dr. Saladino, Paul Saladino, and on the Joe Rogan podcast, I think Sean Baker brought some popularity to it. So I was like, well, I have nothing to lose at this point. I'm highly unfunctional and, it's worth a try. So I think I credit my life to not only the support I had from the people that were, hanging in there with me, but to this carnivore diet because it really allowed the endotoxin load to significantly drop to the point where my body could start to function a little bit with a little bit more ease. And I mean, even just the switching into ketosis proved to be very stabilizing to my system. And, I'm sure had some anti-inflammatory effects because I was no longer trying to heal myself with pounds and pounds of kale and all of these foods that my body just could not extract energy from. So that served as a stabilizing force for sure. And then sort of simultaneously, my sister and someone named Brandon Treen mentioned how they've been learning a lot about metabolic healing and the works of Dr. Ray-Peat. And I was very intrigued because as much as I was regaining function, I didn't want to be on the carnivore diet for the rest of my life. It didn't feel intuitive. On a hot 99-degree day in California, the last thing I wanted to do was eat another pound of ground beef. It just didn't feel right. So I became swept away with the work of Dr. Ray-Peat and just really feeling like the more I read everything I could find from him, the more things started to click. And the more I realized that, whoa, my body had the capacity to heal. I just had to be, very skillful with how I used food and used nutrition. And, in that process, I was also working to rewire my brain. What started as DNRS and then later working with other people and learning skills that actually worked for me, and witnessing what can happen when we get the brain on board while giving the body what it needs, I think is going to be the future of medicine for people with chronic disease because, so many people right now are looking for answers and they feel like they've tried everything and they just are not feeling better. They're the more rigid they are, the worse they feel. And at a certain point, it's pretty inspiring to realize that, Dr. Ray-Peat has been talking about this for a while, and it seems like the mainstream diet culture and even chronic disease culture is missing some pretty critical points. So my inspiration right now is really spreading what has worked for me, what I think is going to change things, and really giving people their power back to heal themselves when no one else can, and heal themselves in an enjoyable and simple way that is just using, using food as medicine truly, and not in a restrictive, only eat meat, or, stay away from grains, dairy, sugar, and, load up your bowl with massive amounts of kale and this raw vegan diet is going to heal you. No, I think it's something about really honoring what the cell needs to thrive, what actually reduces inflammation in the body, how the brain connects to that, how our thoughts interact with our cellular function. That whole brain-body connection is so real, and the more we honor that, the more capacity we have to change things. So hope that wasn't too long. Let me know if you have any questions, again, about my specific journey, especially into the realm of colon hydrotherapy. That plays an interesting and critical component to this piece too, because your immune system is housed in your gut, so your gut function is intricately tied with the rest of your body. If you have a healthy gut, it's pretty likely that you'll also have a healthy system. So you can work from either direction, and just using different entry points to healing and sort of having this kind of mosaic approach has proven to be really helpful. So feel free to reach out with any questions. If there's a diet you're curious about, if you're sort of stuck in trying to heal yourself and it feels like nothing's working, I've been there. Feel free to reach out, and I'm just happy to share with what I've learned, what's worked, what doesn't work, and help in the unlearning process and the relearning process. Because again, so much of what the medical model and the diet model is showing misses the big picture of what the cell actually needs. And when we can actually give the cell what it needs to create enough energy, that's when things start falling into place. And when your cells are working, you can start to think in ways and live in ways that feel good to you, and actually create a life that feels worthwhile, and isn't just managing, but getting back to a place where you're thriving and it feels intentional and purposeful and meaningful and connected. And I think that's what it's about. That's really what it comes down to. And the more people that can feel that way, the better everyone is. So thanks for listening.